And welcome back to MGD 111 Photoshop. Today we're going to talk about resolution. This is really boring stuff that includes a lot of math, and if you get this wrong, you're going to completely mess up your project. So it's a very important thing. So let's take a look at an image here. It's made out of square pixels, and can anybody identify what that is? How many of you thought that was Abraham Lincoln? Well, that's great. Good for you. It actually is an image of Abraham Lincoln. But it doesn't have a lot of squares to work with. I think these are his eyeballs here. I'm not really sure. It's kind of hard to tell because we don't have a lot of information here. But if we use our magic enhance button, hey, wow, he's starting to look a little more detailed. Let's enhance that further. Boop! Wow, that really was Lincoln. Hey, that's pretty cool. Now, the bad news is there is no enhance button. I'm sorry if you've seen it in movies and on TV and all sorts of spy thrillers and things. There is no enhance button, and here's why. Let's take a look at the high resolution image here. Inside his eyeball, for example, there's a whole lot of different pixels. So we can use a few dark pixels here, some lighter pixels here. We have a whole bunch of pixels that can each be a different color to define what his eye looks like. Now that's great. The fewer pixels we have, though, we don't have as much information to work with. And I can't just magically tell Photoshop, oh, take this dark area here. That's Abraham Lincoln's eye. You know what that looks like, right? It doesn't work that way. Same thing from here. Yeah, we can see a face, and if we move far enough back, it'll be recognizable. But Photoshop has no idea that this is a person, let alone Abraham Lincoln. It just doesn't work that way. So the concept of resolution is understanding how many dots we have to work with, how many pixels we have to work with in a particular image. Let's take a look at, for example, some images here. This is what we call a continuous tone photo. It's basically, whoops, sorry, we need to pause that. A continuous tone photo, and basically it's what a real photo in real life looks like if you took it with film, or better yet, if you're actually looking at this in the real world. It's not broken into pixels, although actually because it's on our screen it is, but pretend it's not. And it's as close to real as you can get. Now, unfortunately, in order to put this on a screen, or to put this in a printed piece, we need to break this into little chunks, and that's where Photoshop comes in. Now, if we were doing this in print, we would need a certain number of dots for certain kinds of publications. This is a fairly high-resolution image, and if we zoom out of that, it looks pretty clear. We're not supposed to see those dots. We're just supposed to see the image. But a book or a magazine is not printed in infinite colors like the real world is, so we have to break it into those CMYK dots that we talked about in color mode. If I break it down even further, you can see we have even more dots. Sometimes for something like a newspaper, for example, we need to have bigger dots because the paper kind of gets muddy and it bleeds a little bit. And also, if we're doing something on the web, it's going to be what we call 72 dpi, very low resolution. Now, I know that looks a little confusing because we're looking at it up close, but I need you to understand that resolution has to do with how many dots we have in an inch of data. Let's look at another thing here. This is, again, a continuous tone grayscale image. Now, if I wanted to print this in a newspaper, it's going to look like this. A newspaper is going to break that into dots, and the size of the dot shows you how much color there is. So a dark space is going to be a big black dot. A light space is going to be a really tiny dot to where there's actually the space between the dots really kind of defines it. But Photoshop breaks it up this way. It breaks it up into pixels of different colors. But eventually, when we go to output this for print, this image right here will be reprocessed into something like this. So we need to understand how many dots to work with in a particular image. We're going to take a look at doing that in our next video, how to actually break these things up. So keep Photoshop open, and we will hit that next.